I want to turn to Sateria for a second. So we talked, right, when I introduced you, I talked about your lived experience a little bit and how that has driven you to found the Fibroid Foundation with the mission of advocating for the over 26 million women who have fibroids in the US. But in your work, because you engage in the advocacy side, you engage as a patient advocate, but also from the research perspective. And I think your work can sort of be described as marrying those two parts, the scientific evidence and what do we know about what that means for lived experience and patient value. And so I think that's a really important piece of it. And I want you to share a little bit with us about how you think of advocacy as a tool for shaping policy. And if you don't mind sharing a story about how you've seen that play out in your work.
Well, thank you, Katie and SWHR. I love advocating with you, and I find your organization to be just such a powerful force. So, thank you for having me today. I'll start with the story first, if I may. When I started advocating, it was even before the Fibroid Foundation was a formal entity. I was invited to participate in a research study, a national research study. I arrived at the meeting. There were 16 physicians and me, and I just like was so nervous. And then I thought, I am here to advocate for women all over the country. So I have to find my voice and try to provide any input that I feel might be helpful to advance this meeting. And as it turned out, over the course of the 5-year research study, which was in 9 clinical sites across the country, we made many recommendations to help change, like, for instance, the vial size for blood draws, because a lot of women who are anemic go to their doctor's office, and if they have multiple vials drawn, they feel worse when they leave the appointment than when they arrived. And from the physician's standpoint, that was something they'd never thought of. And so we reduced the blood draw for that study for all 5 years to the smallest possible vial size. And that experience started to open up, just to reveal to me personally what value there is in the patient voice, as Lauren referenced. And so then when we came to Capitol Hill, which was quite a few years later, um, I had that experience to refer to be able to more confidently go to congressional offices and understand that I was bringing a unique vantage point. I also learned as an advocate during that experience that you can find common ground with legislators, with researchers. Many of the offices we visited, many of the staffers were familiar or had family members who had suffered with fibroids. And so there was really a communal just conversation that was really heartfelt, with everyone just being interested in either themselves feeling better or their family members feeling better. And it really just propelled the mission forward. And I might add too, the male lobbyists who were with us to schedule those meetings. We had about 60 meetings to introduce the fibroid bill. They were so touched after they listened to several sessions that they shared that they had a better understanding and a more deep, heartfelt understanding, for this effort that was personal as well as professional to them. So I'd say that, in advocacy, and tools for shaping policy, developing relationships is key. Um, Grassroots momentum is really critical in advancing any initiative, and it helps to bring the issues to the forefront if it's outside of just the policy, powers that be, if you will, spectrum, if it's also, information is being shared by the patients as well.
Thank you so much for that. There were a few things there that I just want to make sure that I reiterate because I think it's so important as you're thinking about this issue. So, number one, this issue of how you bring the patient voice into the research and study design is so critical. We often say that researchers are looking for certain things and they have, hypotheses they're trying to prove through their research, but they're not thinking about what might be, not always, I think they're doing a better job now, but they're not always thinking about how to make it either easier or what the issues or challenges that a patient might face in achieving those goals. And so to your point about, the amount of blood collected or any other challenge that might come up, they're probably not thinking about that when they're creating their design because they're thinking about what is the easiest way for them to get their data. And that is not always the same thing as what is the best way to ensure that a patient wants to participate in research. So I think that piece is so important. Your point about engaging men and helping them to understand these issues is also so critical. If we all, I know we are all a panel of women here, so, so important. And members of Congress are not only women. We have to make sure that we are ensuring that those stories that we're telling and the connections that we're making are being heard in a meaningful way. And chances are, with a lot of these issues that we advocate on, they have a personal connection to it, whether that's their spouse, their child, their mother. We hear this quite often. And so it's one of those things that the more you talk about and educate policymakers on, the better, because they will have heard of it. Or if they haven't heard of it, you have a great opportunity to really share more information with them and how it affects their constituency. And then the last thing I would share is just that when I was on the other side of the table as a congressional staffer and I was very young when I was doing that. I did not know anything. My background is not in science. I was a political science major, which is not what we're talking about here. But I remembered every story from constituents when they would come in and meet with me. And it was really meaningful that they took the time to do that and that I could then go to my boss and say, okay, we met with this person. Here's where they live. Here's what their concern was, and here's what they would like you to do about it. And that makes a huge difference just in terms of connecting it back to their district. So super, super helpful. Thank you so much, Sateria,